Hey guys, here we are again with the fifth part. Kassler is still visiting, same day, same couch, same topic. Or actually, I think now we're about to start a rapid fire round. But I'll start again with a question. Would you say that at that point, young Kassler was having a hard time submitting to authority and just following through with something?
Good question. No, not really. I think I'm more like, yeah, how should I put it? I think I just lacked those. Submitting to authority wasn't really the main problem, I think. I think I just lacked that acceptance, which I was already missing in my childhood from my father, and the recognition. And I think if I didn't get that at the time, and I think I'm free from it now, thank God, but if I didn't get it, I think that's when it broke out in me. And then I had my problems, having to push through it in a certain way. I think it wasn't really the submitting that was the problem. It was more about what resulted from it when I didn't get any recognition for my work, my performance, or whatever, because that was already a red flag for me.
Subconsciously. Or is it also because of life that you somehow already started that way at a young age?
Also, the street.
Environment and so on, also this topic of respect?
Yes, I think that's part of it. Respect, recognition. I also told my trainer twice, hey, listen, I'm not your son. You don't have a parenting duty, you have a training duty. But talk to me like a reasonable adult, but still a young adult, but still. Say, you're not my father. So, from that perspective, let's teach things properly. If it's not working well, let me know. But that wasn't the issue, those were just ideas. And so I think a bit from everyone, but more like this, not submitting, not like that. The real issue arose when I had a boss above me, despite good communication. The tone had to fit. And the tone sets the music for me. And if I notice that at the end of the day, he just has a position that comes with different tasks. Money never really matters to me. His area of responsibility is the management, and my job is just carrying out the tasks. But there just has to be a certain basic respect. That's how it is for me today. There has to be a certain basic respect. And just because your position is better paid or comes with more responsibility or authority, that doesn't justify or give you the right to put yourself above me as a person and talk to me as if I have to be submissive to you and the respect is missing. That's still the case today. And I always tell people that when I talk to them, even in emails, now with viewers who write to me, and I say, for example, also at work or in private, people carry a lot with them there too. People would be surprised how many people suffer because of their work. And I also say, hey, respect is a mutual thing. It's a give and take situation. If you have a boss or superior who emotionally walks all over you and also has no respect for you and no connection, then tell him that to his face. Many people are afraid of losing their job, but I think on such a basis, you won't lose your job. Respect is a mutual and interpersonal thing. A bullying atmosphere can change. Respect is a two-way street, and it's crucial for your own well-being. If you give respect but don't receive it in return, it's best to distance yourself from that person if the situation doesn't improve.
But to get back to the
question, I believe the things you already mentioned earlier, the ones that someone kind of... But this submission in marriage wasn't really the problem.
is it now again, which at least in your life, at least that's my interpretation. Kassra quickly gets angry too, so okay, now I tried to do it properly. What? Okay, I tried. I have those vibes again. I just resisted it. I'm angry again now. Okay, before I went down that path. I went down that path. It worked. Now, damn, where is everyone? And now it's going fast.
What you were successful at, and in my opinion, in my perception, that's where I was most successful, most successful in the criminal scene and all activities in the red light nightlife, and I said I felt the most.
And how does that work now? So first, like, go home and tell your partner work was crap, this and that happened. I told them to kiss my ass.
I already sued them through a lawyer, so I've taken that road. I also tried, I didn't just throw in the towel right away. I tried with my employment reference instead, or rather with my... I applied at a new place while my employment contract remains pending due to a legal dispute. Well-known television chef in Hamburg, Adi Gungamish. Back then he still had Le Canard or something like that. Michelin star.
So high-end.
I'm not sure if he still owns the restaurant, but he's definitely been successful on television, particularly on Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen with Tim Melzer in shows like Kitchen Impossible. So I thought to myself, you know what, I'll apply to him. He also has roots like that. He built everything up himself. You can learn something there. They're motivated and all. He's challenged and a go-getter. So I applied there, just drove over. I think it was in Altona or somewhere. I went into the building. I'll never forget it. I entered Ryan's restaurant and asked the waiter if Mr. Gungamish was there. The waiter said yes and asked me to wait a moment. He was actually there and he came over. He came up to me and said, yes, hello, how can I help you? I said, yes, I am Zargaran. I'm doing an apprenticeship, but I'm dissatisfied with the training place. I feel like I don't belong there and I'm not learning anything, which was true at times. I would like to switch and come to you. I thought, okay, do you have an application portfolio with you? Reachable by phone, yes, here you go. Yes, good, all right, I'll get in touch, goodbye. He then left, was brief and to the point, and then left. Then I waited for about 3 or 4 weeks. I waited for a call back that never came, so I called and asked to speak with Mr. Gungamish. I believe I was the first to personally request him. That's my assumption based on how it appeared to me. And then the phone rang and I said, Mr. Gungamish, this is Zargaran. I introduced myself to you in the store 3 weeks ago. And he said, yes, okay, how are you? I'm good. And the problem was, at that time I was still registered in Norderstedt, but I had already moved in with my partner back then and was living in Bamberg. But I hadn't changed my registration yet. And my application documents still said Norderstedt. Then he said to me, yes, basically I find you interesting and I have no objections, but you live in Norderstedt. That's too far away. And I think that this long distance, it's all a bit difficult for me. It's not that interesting for me anymore. I need people close by for short assignments and to fill in quickly, he said. So it's difficult. That doesn't make it any easier, he said. I still wish him all the best, only the best. And then he hung up. I couldn't even respond anymore. Yeah, but I'm still here. He just hasn't called again. So I said, okay, come on, just forget it, dude. Something like that. I'm doing this thing now. Of course, she was sad too. It wasn't a good development for me either. I also invested something I was interested to. It's not like I just did it. That also has to do with disappointment.
To do, of course.
Sure. And above all, if you're good at what you do, if you're good and still somehow fail, whether it's your own fault or not, everyone can form their own opinion about that. But of course, at first for you, it's like, okay, it's not a pleasant situation. It's not like I did it because I had to and I was never interested and then I just created the next best situation to have a reason to say, yeah, well, it didn't work out, bye. I wanted to, I was interested, I was determined and everything, but it just wasn't meant to be. And then I said, you know what, screw you, basically. I told her directly that I tried. She responded with disappointment and we discussed the entire situation again. But she didn't really have a choice. I was already the dominant one in the relationship and set the tone. Of course, she said, damn, try again. Then I mixed with Gungo and then there was nothing. Then I said, come on.
And then we have to imagine, do your buddies actually get called or do you go somewhere?
Yes, exactly. I never completely broke off contact. I just didn't have the overlap anymore. And then I wrote to them, hey, and so what's up and what are you doing? I messaged the other 1 or 2 girls again, asking how they were. They asked if I was still at the shop. I said, yeah, so we met up. It happens really fast. What was already there is quickly revived again. And I wasn't gone forever either, but it was 9 months or so. So yeah, I was fully back in it and got right back into the swing of things. And then one thing quickly led to another, and I don't want to spoil anything now.
Was your first step getting back in with a woman again, or?
First, after the Rhine again, I don't have to put things together. I can't just say, okay, I'm here, come on now. Instead, I kept up the contact again and said, yeah, and so on, and tried, said, yeah, I told you, and so on, man. sweetie, and and how are you now? You need this back and forth, and what are you doing now? Yeah. Do we want to work together again? And so on. I don't have a problem with it, and I missed you. You're such a handsome, sweetie, darling, and whatever else. My partner was still by my side, but she ignored the situation, which didn't make things easier. Because she also benefited financially from it, of course. But in the end, that's partly how it is, yeah? After 2 or 3 weeks, I was right back in the middle of it all. Max, yeah, that was 4 weeks. It went really fast then. And then,
Yeah, bouncing or something like that. I agree.
then did some bouncing around through a subcontractor. And yeah, then I got the vibe going again. It was running again. This time, not so much on a relationship level, but more on a business level. I mean, it was always business, but this time it was clear for both of us, okay? I'm in, and another one joined, making it the second one so far.
How should one imagine that? Many people experience this. A woman says, "You're a sweet guy. I don't have a boyfriend right now, and I'd like to spend some of the money I've earned." Yeah, it kind of sounds like that. How is that kind of money divided up?
So, just briefly for the circumstances, for a bit of transparency, to create some understanding, if possible, for this kind of field. The woman is, of course, just as insistent on her outward appearance as the guy. And you have, of course, a certain reputation as well. You have a public image, people know you. And of course, they will also have a guy, an alpha male, who somehow represents something, who has respect. Not just anyone, not someone solid that they can't do anything with, because they also have a certain idea, a certain image of a man. It's clear, right? They're not machines. And that's a very specific image of a man, right? And that applied to me, and accordingly, I still had my contacts and was able to get them into that place and into that place, and that's... I'm back with my guy, which is nice. She also had a thing for someone, all right? She is, of course, again, like, I'm together with this one here, look, this is Kassra, and this is my guy, and all that. That's an essential part of the whole thing. That's how it happened. Oh, very quickly. I left too, not because she wanted me to, but because I chose to.
I need to ask again, how is that possible? Okay, she works how many days a week? 4, right? 4 days a week, and then Thursday to Sunday, always, and then you meet up and...
I occasionally visited her over those 4 days to collect the money, or we'd meet up and go out to eat, during which she'd give me the money. Then there was a phase where
But is that a firm agreement, okay? No, that was... The classic 50-50 arrangement, while common, is actually forbidden. So this, yeah, sure. Did you have an agreement with her, or were you just relying on her word that she'd give you something? Well, it sounds weird, but...
No, you set the money aside, and if she needs something, you give it to her. That's how it was. She always gave it to me.
All the money?
She gave it, said, hey, if there's something I need or whatever, I'll let you know, then you can give it to me, and so on. And then I bought it for her and organized it. And of course, like, she always had some money on her. She wasn't broke.
No, okay, but you must have had an idea in your head about what we're talking about now. She gave you in those 4
days, 6,000 euros, for example.
Yeah, just as an example. And what did you consider your share in that?
I prioritized this as my own. It wouldn't be truthful to say we divided it evenly or in any other proportion.
Yeah, okay, but I'm the one.
Man, I did that. I understand what you're getting at, but that's not how we did it. The understanding was, I'm the man. I'm the one who handles the finances. I have the money in my hand. If you need something, I'll give it to you. I take care of it. I take the money in my hand, invest it, and turn it into more. That was the basic understanding for her.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to chuckle at that. I turn it into more, but it sounds more like you turn it into less, her money.
Well, not necessarily.
You also have
here and there thrown in a little bit, but basically, yes. More of it was spent on consumption than on the business, but still here and there you also...
But you lived off of it?
Yes, among other things, of course. I wasn't working anymore, nothing at all.
Is it then... Did it also lead to social fraud on the side, like with the authorities, something with health insurance or something like that?
No, I did all of that myself.
So independently then?
Yes, of course. sales, whatever. And you paid for everything yourself.
Okay, so you're back in that environment. Money is coming in, but you still have a wife and child at home. It's always something I try to tell people, so I'd be interested in your opinion on that. At night, you encounter prostitutes, pimps, criminals, intoxicated individuals, and drug addicts, the types of people commonly found in such neighborhoods, and so to speak.
But I wasn't on the strip very much. I did that deliberately for that reason.
But I'm asking a question. Okay, and then the jump to the father at home. Who's playing with Lilithy?
Unfortunately, I didn't win anything in my role as a father, at least not with the older one, and but I was always on the road, hardly ever at home, had a lot of conflict with the mother, and spent very little time together. When we did, it was always very materialistic. Renting hotels or something, dropping her off. Here's some money, have a nice day, I'm off. I didn't notice the needs of the family, especially my daughter, at all. I was completely focused on myself, totally egotistical, totally inconsiderate, even regarding I was an irresponsible father to my family. Does that weigh on me today? Yes, of course. It also affects the relationship with the oldest one, totally. She was affected by it too.
That means, without wanting to offend you, you were actually a biological father, but not really a dad?
Yes, that's right. I lived with her, but far from what you would call a proper father. And what I would tell someone today is that what you're doing isn't really being a father, it's more like irresponsibility. It's best to avoid it entirely. Sorry. Then just stay away completely again and give someone else the chance so she can meet a decent partner, so at least the child can have a proper upbringing.
Can you be involved in organized crime, in the red light district, in drug dealing, and still be a loving partner and father?
That
What?
Yes, humans have a great, great potential for repression, for selective perception, and also for. But is it honest then? Of course, it's not honest, but that's not the point. It's not about honesty, it's simply about a certain.
Yeah, because
Wait a second. A certain. Yeah, this act, I don't know. You can't say he doesn't love the child, but it's schizophrenic, and you know it. There was now an extreme example during the Nazi era. There were all these concentration camp guards from Auschwitz. Those were
mass murderers, they went home and
played with their children, and they had I don't know. I read up on it a bit during my time in prison. I worked through all those topics a bit, among other things. That one, and there's the famous Hooker photo album or something. I think definitely a photo album from Auschwitz from that group, and they took photos, and the family looked nice, and everything was fine, and the children were there.
They had
a separate living area outside the camp with nice amenities like coffee and cake, despite having killed 90,000 Bulgarians just 4 hours earlier. Bulgarian Jews gassed. That's why, and people today aren't any different in the way they do things. Not all, but people. They're not different people than today.
from back then.
That's why people tend... Sorry, just one last thought, Philip. Do people tend... Is there a certain character to people? Or are there certain types of people? Such people can simply separate between I do this, I give out murder contracts and sell women, have people beaten half to death, make money, bring only suffering and misery to people. But then tonight, I go home, play, like you said yourself, I play Lilithy, do crafts with my daughter and watch, I don't know, Ruffalo or something, and children's fairy tales. And that's very, very, yes.
For me, it was about honesty. I always have a hard time with that when I say, when even someone who's involved in organized crime, they lose empathy. That often gets lost along the way. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always say that for me, as a young violent offender, empathy was one of the first things to die. I saw people...
Didn't feel anything?
I think every dog was closer to me than any person.
The question is always, and I totally agree with you, the question is always, How similar is the relationship between the children? What kind of love do you give to the children? Interacting with a child and doing activities together doesn't necessarily make someone a loving, supportive father who is truly there for the child. Is he really such a loving father, or is it more like, yeah, I have to do it and I'm there and I have a facade that I keep up? You have to look at that individually. But I'm convinced that even people who can do such things can still love their children in their own way. That doesn't make it any better. And not, or more acceptable, but I think that's just how people are complex in their psyche and also in the way they act things out. There are many, many weird, cringe, and messed up situations where people justify things to themselves, separate themselves, and can even have schizophrenic lifestyles like slaughtering people during the day, then in the evening and morning sitting at the breakfast table with their kids as if everything is normal. And that's why. But as you said, and as I've seen myself, you become colder, less empathetic, and more detached. You don't really have time for personal matters anymore. You're constantly focused on business, always in that mode. Ultimately, politics revolves around pursuing money, navigating street politics, and seeking opportunities. All that interpersonal stuff like, hey, how are you, man? Everything okay? Just gets left behind. Today I played foosball and had a great time with the guys. I met a nice guy who's easy to talk to and will be a good friend. I'm glad to have him around as he has a positive impact on me. We have great conversations. That can't be real. You say, what are you, some kind of sissy? I don't have time for that. Are you bringing me something now?
Where is
The added value. Goodbye. And everything else is some faggot from their perspective. And he would be like, get lost, man. You know what I mean? Or then
your next steps? Okay, at home Chrysal's a lot of stress, so you try to make up for it somehow with material things to compensate. What are your next steps then?
So I'm caught up in that lifestyle, and then I run into an old acquaintance of mine from the red light scene in northern Germany. And he said, hey, you're back again. I heard you're back at it. Your woman is back there and all that. I said, yeah, but it was nothing, and so on. We knew each other. Yeah, I didn't mention him because he wasn't really worth mentioning. You know, a lot of people pass through life, especially in that kind of life, and 95% of them mean nothing. But he came up to me, we saw each other somewhere, and he was like, hey, how are you? What's up? I'm back in it, trying not to care. Work is good, things are going well, making some money, and now I'm building myself up again. He says, yeah, cool and all. I was like, okay, so what are you doing now? And he says, yeah, I'm in Kiel now and stuff. And I was like, so what are you doing? Yeah, and so on. We're building up a supporter group for the Heads Angels here. I was like, what's that, supporter and all? He says they're recruiting supporters to join their cause and asks, how about you? We're looking for good people. Hey everyone, would you like to join me sometime? I can show you sometime. Are you interested? Why don't you come along and all? I said, what is that anyway? I knew about the Hells Angels, but back then Hells Angels to me were just old men drinking. Long-haired, smelly men with dirty cuts or vests back then. They're in the red light district. They're also a criminal organization, but just so irrelevant. Not at all my image, especially with the migrants back then or the migrant background of the guys and so on.
That was at the time when it all started in Kiel, so
early 20s, 22. And back then, yeah, I don't know. And that's how I met him again. We talked about it a few times. Now I have a tattoo convention in Kiel. I've been invited by the guys, come by, man, it's awesome and all that. I thought it was awesome. But I also started getting tattoos back then, so I thought, okay, come on, please. We met there, and the tattoo mansion was organized by the Hells Angels. Background, back then they also had tattoo artists from the coast. That's Kiel, as they call it. That's where all the brothels and stuff are. Back then, Assis, Eros, and so on were there too. I don't know if it's still like that today. I haven't been to Kiel in a long time. And we also had a tattoo study there, and of course they had their booths there, and it was...
That was impressive for you somehow, going there and...
At first, not really. At first, it was okay for me. I saw one or two guys from Hamburg, but I didn't think they were that great. At first, I just thought, whatever. And I also met a well-known guy from Hamburg, very unpleasant. He didn't like me, I didn't like him, but I was with him and we were out and about, and then he introduced me to the president, Dirk, back then.
A very well-known Hell's Angel.
Yeah. Exactly, a very well-known Hell's Angel. Kiel.
Also an old charter.
A very tight-knit group, very closed off, very tight-knit, and also economically very strong. And I think they also had Kiel very much under control at that time, especially the coast and so on. They were economically connected everywhere in the brothels, in the clubs, and they were very well organized, especially the president back then. And I don't even know if that's still the case today. Things change quickly. And that's how it was back then. We were there with the guys. I said hello. They were very reserved, but they still said hello. We still had some manners. Then I met this Turkish guy of Turkish descent, also named Kadir. Back then he was a prospect, so a second level candidate. And yeah, he introduced me like, Kassra, how are you? And so on. Everything was cool, and that's how it went. Then we walked around, checked out the tattoo convention, and then we went back to the clubhouse. Back then they had a clubhouse near the coast. It used to be a fire station, a huge complex, huge parking lot, separated by a massive steel gate. A huge place, I can imagine, with sleeping rooms, big team showers, and the fire station was really huge. And it was fully equipped, and Legion 81 was the crew hanging out there back then, along with the president. Prospect, so level 1, level 2. The candidate, and also with member, Legion 88, also with customers and patches and others, all keeping the same structure at the lower level and supporter structure. I was there a couple of times. I met the president back then, and I met the guys. It clicked right away. They wanted me immediately. They saw I was already known. Of course, they asked around, and I remember back then I was at Rios.
But that's where your background helps, right? Red Light District Cast, of course, sure.
That's the be-all and end-all. Who is this guy anyway? I was in prison and all that, and the guys knew me. I mean, he knew me. You don't mess around with him that easily. I mean, that guy, he doesn't turn around, he doesn't run away, and if he hits, there better be a tough guy standing there who won't go down. So the guy is definitely a serious opponent, and that's how it went. Then we had more events, then there were more club nights, then I was at the door, I was there. And after 2 months, they said, hey, my man, are you interested? Do you want to join in? We think you're cool, we need you, we want guys like you, and you would be an asset to the club, and would you be interested? You wouldn't have to do any odd jobs here either. That's not how it is with us. We want to have good guys here, build a good structure, and develop new talent. Young talent in the sense of, for the club. And then I said, yeah, sure, you know what? Let's try it, let's do it. I got involved by joining as a hang-around, got the critical round patch immediately, and was then fully engaged in the action.
Yeah, sometimes I get comments when I comment on biker documentaries or talk about my story that people can't imagine what it means to get a vest like that, those patches and all.
They say,
it's just a piece of leather, there's a piece of fabric on it, something is written on it, and people stab or shoot each other over it. How was it for you to suddenly be in a group like that and get that vest for the first time?
I just didn't really relate to it because it was new to me. I didn't know anything about it. I was unaware of the significance, reputation, and aura associated with those patches. Nimbus in the sense of special status, reputation, respect, things like that. But I only learned about club life and these club structures, motorcycle clubs, supporter clubs, so supporter clubs and the motorcycle club scene, motorcycle club 1%. I only learned about all that after I joined. That didn't exist for me at all.
Maybe just a quick explanation. No, a percentage or something, yes?
So in the motorcycle scene, there are motorcycle clubs, and not every motorcycle club is criminal. There is a very specific percentage that's called the 1%er club, outlaw motorcycle gangs, who put themselves above the state, have their own rules, do not cooperate with the state, reject the state, and sometimes even consciously fight against it. And that's what they call the 1%er clubs. There's a long history behind that, which I won't get into now.
You can just Google it, you can
talk about it again in a separate episode. It's like this. The club always has expectations that you stand up for the club, that you do something for the club, whether it's business, violence, murders, working against the state, and for that there are awards in the club. You have to catch people somehow too. And because it's a patriarchal, very strictly military-led hierarchy, and they live off these awards, the foreigner status.
It's sometimes quite interesting because some of the motorcycle clubs talk about freedom, ride free, live free, and so on. And I believe that some motorcycle clubs have stricter rules than some allotment garden associations. So it's not really free, is it? It is very
hierarchical and has nothing to do with easy rider or free rider, but rather it's about submitting, keeping your mouth shut, and just taking it.
politics.
Do politics. Do politics, put up with it, and be dependent on the development and progress of the club, on others, and submit and keep your head down. That's the structure it dictates. So there's little of free like the wind, like the motto Dieter Bohlen wrote in his song back then. But that's actually the exact opposite. People have selective perception and a flawed understanding of freedom. I used to have that too, Philip. I used to have that too. It felt right back then, but seems weird today. And that's how it works. And then I realized, hey, the more you have on your vest, and I also learned the meanings, even with the angels now, and the more respect you get, and you move up the food chain, you learn that over time. Nobody really teaches you that, except for the meaning of the patches, but you see it, you get to know the structure, and you don't need an introductory course. Like today, we're doing a club lesson so you guys know how it works. Sit down 5 hours, break for lunch, and so on. Instead, you just learn it over time.
Keep the entry short, learning by doing.
Learning by doing, and you just pick it up like that. That's what the sergeant and all the others are there for. You also have a sponsor member who acts as your sponsor and makes sure you get introduced to club life, and that's how it works. Then you quickly learn whether you're into it or not. Many people say from the beginning, not really.
Go along with it, you notice it quickly, you notice.
Klapper says they sort themselves out quickly, stay friends, and go their own way, which is better. What should we change at the next meeting? This current approach isn't effective.
Exactly, I experienced that too. You shouldn't underestimate it. Friends brought in other friends. My book, a Spiegel bestseller titled Hate Breeds Violence, is linked under the video. It's available at King Among the Kongs, along with various other items. Everything is signed with a fun message for you. Then Beef Bandits, thank you with Philip Zane. You can save 10% with the Beef Bandits with Philip Zane. Everything about meat, wraps, sauces, and so on from my friend Klaus Grill. Thanks for watching. Check out the grilling content and Z Plus for all things sports, including proteins, supplements, and apparel. You also get a 10% discount with Philip there. Thank you, and thanks to all the channel members who support this. Support on Patreon or with a Twitch Prime subscription. Thank you and much respect. Let's continue. There was a quick cut here, not because Kassra said something he didn't want to say, but because I forgot to free up storage space. The memory card was full. Luckily, you saw that, or we would have kept rambling. So we left off at the point where, especially when friends brought other friends in, and then the friendship ended up falling apart.
Either the friend didn't work out for one of them, or he did a business deal that went wrong and backfired on him, or he was also involved in a business in the way, and the other friend said maybe the conversation was because they had a lot of money, and then 20 years of friendship didn't mean anything. He just sorted them out.
Or maybe even simpler, I don't know if you've experienced something like that, but that a friend gets involved like that. It didn't work out with the club, or the club said yes, but either we're your brothers, yes.
That
is.
Yes, that's it, yes, definitely.
And there I would have.
That's what I meant. It didn't work with Erd.
So?
Well, but honestly, it's pretty simple. It always depends on the group, or rather on certain people within the group. Because one thing people need to understand is that politics is done just as manipulatively and with lobbying as anywhere else, and people always try. There are always ringleaders, there are always executors, and always followers who carry it out, and people who give the orders for the execution. And there are always pawns, there are always sages, there are officers, there are always presidents, and they don't see people as human material, but rather as time, and people are just used. That
is very similar to right-wing extremism that's also done by people, yes, of course.
In the end, it's the same structures, among other things, at the label, and it's always the same types of characters with the same mindset. So people just do what they feel like doing.
But did that also affect you in any way? Okay, now you're in Kiel, you know about their status, their clubhouse is impressive, you know, they're making real money compared to what you might be making yourself there.
In Hamburg,
Managers, it's about real estate, it's about investments, it's about companies, events. Then the group also did something to you and said, okay, now I've got a taste for it. The group knows when they get going. They're active worldwide, they're active nationwide. They can really strike. Even when you see the vest from 50 meters away, people cross to the other side of the street. There is a fascination, yes, also a fascination with evil, fascination for many.
fans and regular citizens in various places and cars who share similar traits, which is pretty cool.
Did that also do something to you? Did you get a taste for it very quickly? Was it more gradual where you decided to take a slow look at it first, or were you fired up from the start? I'm not sure.
How do you determine if it was quick or gradual? At the end of the day, I stuck with it and it fascinated me. Of course, I understand what you're getting at and what you mean, but I don't have one now. What is fast and what is slow? Or am I slow at first or am I fast? Ultimately, it fascinated me. I saw the possibilities and potential of this entire structure. I saw that when you're in this structure, your business is secure, that the guys, your brothers, take care of your business. Your problem is also a club problem. A club problem is also your problem. The special status has changed, meaning, as you've said, when you show up somewhere, chairs are quickly moved aside, so nobody gets in your way. I wasn't aware of that before, but it's entirely different. Yeah, and you notice it too. Power is a very seductive, addictive thing that makes people do a lot of strange things. It can sometimes tempt people, and it can also lead to strange developments in people's characters, and that's how it was for me too. I realized I had a certain power I shouldn't have had yet. Still, a supporter group has its own bus. Yeah, and everyone knows, okay, now it's close, or what is that? And accordingly, of course, I got a taste for it, really got going, and then we also had a few actions in Kiel. Then I also got feedback like, hey, you're a good guy, you're doing well.
What do you mean by action?
Well, acts of violence, confrontations with competing groups, with opposing parties, you can't just say,
What? Who are we talking about? Mongols
Gremium Bandidos.
or local gangs?
Yes, local gangs. Back in my time, the Bandidos were founded during that period. Back then, also by former, I don't know
You don't like the name?
but also neo-Nazis. Peter Borchert, a National Democratic Party official at the time, later became a Nazi. I never met him, but that's the story. He founded the Bandidos in Neumünster, I think. They were then banned, and there was a bit of a war. There were skirmishes.
Is
Already pretty much settled, but there were shootings and stabbings here and there.
with a
Motorcycle frames, so the fact that no one died is really, you could say it was very lucky from all sides, yeah. And stabbings in Lübeck, I think it was Red Devils, or was it
Neumünster?
Subway and other incidents showed it was not harmless. During my time, it had calmed down. The Chicanos, a Bandidos supporter group like Liga 181 or Red Devils, were active back then. Were dissolved under pressure. The Hells Angels and the Neumünster Bandidos had been banned by the State Interior Ministry in Schleswig-Holstein and have relocated to Padborg, Denmark. But underpass, they're just stopping there. But then they automatically became quieter. There wasn't much left. It was a scattered group back then. I think the leader ended up in prison. Then it said something like informant activity, something like that.
With
Informant activity and so on, so everything was very, very scattered, very restless. The club lacked a solid structure, leading to its collapse and the end of the motorcycle club competition. Instead, there were more local groups within the city that sold drugs. Kiel Garden, for example, is a social hotspot, a big hub. So it's a lot of drug dealing takes place there. There's the Kurdish customer structure with a coach in the background who was active there. They were very strong in my time. We had a conflict with them and things like that individually with Russian and Chechen people. Here and there we had problems. But in Kiel it was still within limits compared to other cities, especially Berlin, and that was on a whole different level in a negative sense in terms of violence and physical confrontations. And it was like that, of course, we had our issues with people here and there. A few things happened. And for example, in my case, I proved myself in those situations. I stood my ground.
But was that important to you?
Yes, of course, absolutely.
Well, I do want to be here. That's what I was...
I was known for that. It was my name. As you said, I want to be someone here, and I've proven myself.
But your main place of residence was still Hamburg? Exactly. And then I commuted, yes. Okay, I went again.
Stayed there for a week, slept in the clubhouse on the weekend, and of course that made my relationship with my partner even worse. But yeah, the poor woman had to endure it all for the sake of love and the child for a few more years until it finally broke apart. But the status quo kept getting worse also in my relationship with my partner.
Acts of violence are occurring. You want to make a name for yourself in Legion 81 in Kiel? Did you quickly stand up and say, okay, I would like to make the jump from Legion 81 to the Hells Angels Club itself?
No, not yet. Kiel was out of reach for me since it differed from other charters. Well, I didn't have anything to compare it to, but the Kiel Hells Angels back then, with the people they had, were a very close-knit group and didn't let many people in. So into the structure itself, on a personal level, it was just like, hello, hello, but there wasn't more than small talk. And they were very isolated, a tightly counted group. The prospects that were there, you could really count them on one hand, and 80% of them didn't even make it. And then that's how it was. And they also showed that to the outside world. You could tell it was very distant, very hard to reach, especially for supporters. And you really had to, both financially and personally, you had to bring something to the table. They were very, very unapproachable.
Simply out of fear of being infiltrated?
Being infiltrated. Dirk was a very paranoid president back then. Of course, he had a lot to hide. He generated a lot of money through the brothels. He had an Albanian partnership, including a well-known personality with a selfie back then in Hamburg. Probably officially as well, so an illegal partnership. Running a brothel isn't exactly an illegal business, and he wanted to keep people at a distance to ensure nothing slipped, meaning he didn't want any problems interfering with his business.
You have to understand that, or you could explain it to people. If issues arise with other clubs or gangs, how would that impact the financial situation? And who comes into play?
The police. Then the top gang comes in. Well, I won't say that now. I have a lot of friends in the police.
It's also a gang, but I don't do it.
Because it's not a gang. There are a lot of honest people involved. I know them too. That's why I'm avoiding it now. Of course, the police show up on the day. They're always around anyway, but then they come out into the open and say, friends, this is a constitutional state. We have laws here. And who are you to put yourselves above the law? What's going on here? What's happening here? And then once the machinery gets going, it can also crush you very quickly. You shouldn't underestimate that. And when the pressure from the state increases and from the police, there's not much room left for playing gangster anymore.
Exactly, you shouldn't forget that. And I have also met some presidents. There are also very, very thoughtful, very calm, very intelligent ones who rather manage this club,
Who
also say they don't want any trouble at all. And for example, Mr. Sinem said it correctly. We want to make money. We want to fly under the radar. That's what we're doing. They even got rid of people who were known for causing trouble. Who wanted the president, vice president, and sergeant to all have their homes searched just because there was a fight at the club over some girl?
That's how it is. And the police always assume, in most cases, that everything that happens is ordered by the president. So you automatically become a target. There's no racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations act here like in America, which means that no matter what crime happens, the president or the boss of the family, especially in the mafia, gets targeted automatically. While that doesn't exist here, things can still happen rapidly at times.
A good reason for house searches?
Of course, yes, and above all, you just don't want to come into focus. Especially if you're someone who makes several million a year, and legally too, in any case, that's definitely breathtaking. If you don't feel like dealing with that, it's okay. Ultimately, use the structure for your own benefit. In that case, the president in Kiel was calm, thoughtful, and distant. He didn't let everyone get close, and not everyone was recruited. And then, for the first time, they set up a supporter structure filled with migrants, including tough guys like me. And that one blew up in their faces too. Kiel was a quieter city compared to Berlin. There were wars there too, but the police weren't as outwardly present with open optimizations, regular raids, inspections, the trade office, public order office, tax investigators, all sorts of things in Kiel, like they were in Berlin, for example. And after we caused chaos there for several months, including the knife fight at the trade fair with Kurdish rivals. I've already told that story on another channel, where there was a serious knife fight in public at the main train station during prime time around 2 or 3 in the afternoon in broad daylight. A whole bar was destroyed, people were stabbing and fighting, and there was nothing left of the bar really. Nothing was left. The counter was smashed, tables, chairs, everything was gone, you couldn't have imagined it. It was insane, which got their attention, and they asked what was going on.
But you also always have to say, especially when civilians are involved in accusations, when it's very public,
and run the risk of being drawn into these wars. Innocent people, meaning innocent bystanders who are just passing by, and there is political pressure. There is political pressure, and rightly so. And I mean, it's well known, unfortunately, civilians have already been caught in such crossfires, especially in America, in Canada.
Monbosche who
have an atomic bomb under the Jeep, and then you run into opponents, I mean, other players, and a boy was running by there, and he was killed. So from that perspective, it's not unjustified. And also, that shouldn't be allowed. We're not in the Wild West. We are
not here. No civil war in the streets. No
civil war in the streets. You know yourself how it is. Therefore, it's right, and there's nothing to criticize. That's just how things are. The Kielites angels had police contacts, but not as informants. It happened like this.
Maybe yes.
Also, it was official there with
a contact with such a
biker cop. Hey, we're going for a ride, this and that. That was a live and let live kind of thing. We tell you, we don't want to cause any trouble here. They went up to him and said, listen, sunshine, this crew here, either they go or we'll make your life hell here. Then you'll have the authorities raiding your brothels, bars, nightclubs, everything you've got, tattoo shops, you name it. Then the business office will come, and it's game over for you. Otherwise, we'd have a completely different problem with you. Of course, they agreed it was all good. They abruptly announced that Legion 81 would be completed overnight. In the meantime, during that period, the president of our structure, meaning our supporter club, was arrested, and he then offered himself to the authorities as a key witness. Maybe we should get right into the topic. Those factors emerged later, but shifted the momentum entirely at that specific point in time. And they said, that's it, get out, we're done, finished. And the last thing was, they said, we're now recruiting the potential people from League 181, those who have the potential to become angels now, have the potential to become Hell's Angels. We pull them out, the rest should go their own way, we don't want to see them anymore. And I was one of them.
It's a challenging loyalty to lead the charge and wage war, so the police then come and threaten to close the businesses down.
We'll be shut down and
then goodbye, have a good trip. Just normal things you experienced there. We'll start right away. We might also discuss your Legion president. 81 is also a very interesting story that happened there, quite crazy. Thank you, Kassra, for sharing your eventful life story with us. We'll get to that in a moment. I hope that some people who are interested in such structures were able to take something away from this. Listen very carefully to where
this life path
will lead afterwards. Tola, thank you very much. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Feel free to comment. Check out the book by Kassra, The Persian. I can really recommend it. So check it out. Of course, it will be linked under the videos. Also, depending on what Kassra says I can link and what I can't. Of course. And as always, I'll sign off with an ahoy from the coast.